So the closing panel of today will feature the coming together of what we heard and talked about all day long: science, industry, outreach, communication, which encompasses education, and finally some regulations. Hopefully it'll be interesting enough, plant a seed, and provoke some thought for you guys to take back when you leave here from Rome. I'd like to invite up to the table, or the desk, or the podium, Bruno Pop from Yakult Europe, Dean Gina Kadar from the Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine, Suzanne Bakard, the VP of Marketing from Deerland, David Pineda, DPE Consulting, and Rosanna Petri, the Executive Director of IPA Europe. I think we have the names set up. Okay. So I've prepared some questions to open up the discussion to our panel. I'll give the audience an opportunity. There'll be a floating mic if you guys have some Q&A afterwards. Hopefully you can put them, the questions, some of the questions, I'm sure that provoke some interesting thought. It'd be nice to get involved in some of your thoughts back. So are the mics working? Suzanne, is the mic fine?
1, 2, 3.
Yeah? Okay, good. So I'd like to start, in Europe, since we're in Rome and Italy. I'd like to start with Europe. In the current regulatory environment that we're starting to see a softening approach from several countries, I'd like to direct the question to Rosanna. How do you foresee this playing out? Do you think this domino will continue? Because as Luis mentioned, it eased up over the summer. Do you think it'll ramp up again? Will we see other countries turning the corner?
Well, thank you for the question, George. Give me a little bit the opportunity to share with you some little reflection, but of course I don't have the answer. Huh? But, from what we are seeing, at a certain point the Commission will need to take a position. I'm not sure that this will mean that we will have one regulation for all Europe, because as soon as countries start to implement national rules, it became different than to make a step back. But what I think is that if we can go with the European Commission and with the endorsement of some member states' authority, in the direction of a clear definition for food applied in Europe, endorsed by a number of countries, this will certainly clarify the context. I don't know if I answer, which means that I'm not sure that we will have a change immediately of the nutrition and health claim regulation, to be clear, because we have been asking for a change of a nutrition and claim regulation since quite a long time. Not only as probiotic sector, but also as food sector in general, because of other points. And so this is not something that is going to happen tomorrow, but I think that soon we will have some evolution.
Do you think the work we're doing in Europe, your work with IPA Europe, is forcing the hand a little bit?
Well, I think that we have done a good job, George. I think that the Codex work gave the opportunity to rise again the point, because when I started in IPA Europe 5 years ago, I was already working in probiotic before, but when I started 5 years ago, there was a sort of silence in the European Commission around the probiotic. Nobody wanted to talk about that, Now that we started to do this work, and then the Codex work, and then the question was again on the table of member states, because they had to position themselves. And in the discussion in Codex with the European Commission, it was clear that some member states wanted to move on. So I think that we contributed to this moving. Thank you.
Thanks. And I mean, the discussion we had, and Francois mentioned it, how it was basically a disagreement between two countries which created the WHO definition back in '01, and the coming together of experts it's the same story, that this domino effect has happened is like intra-countries within, member states in Europe saying, why are probiotics coming from other countries and we're not supporting our own producers? So, yeah, let's look forward and positively towards that. You mentioned about the codex work, and I want to segue to David. So this domino effect and this softening approach, because Europe is influential, how do you think it's going to affect other governments around the world? Because I meet with governments and they're telling me, well, we're looking at what Europe is doing. What do you think we'll create? We already have enough divergence and gaps, so what's your thought process?
Well, if we consider that the European Commission is basing its position on a 2007 guidance, and it has been said today that it's perhaps obsolete, that has to be reviewed. Denmark has asked for that, and as Rosanna just mentioned, we moved from silence in Europe to discussion. That's very positive. As Rosanna also mentioned, yes, the Codex work has provided a lot of visibility to discussion on probiotics, has provided visibility also to the European member states. With the pandemic, we understand that because of the e-commerce, so a lot of sales on internet, that has, in the case, for example, of Spain, that have highlighted the need for that. So all that is going in a good direction. You say yes, well, if, and Rosanna, if there is some national guidelines between some member states in the European Union, is going to create more divergence. We have to see how things are going, but let's bear in mind that Codex Alimentarius is an organization with 188 member countries and the European Union as a member organization. So when the European Union goes to a Codex meeting and has to discuss any issue that is not harmonized in Europe, they have to discuss and coordinate every morning. They are in a meeting, they have to discuss and coordinate their common position if possible. I think last two years ago, nobody would challenge the European Commission in terms of their opinion on the term of the use of the term probiotics. However, what we are seeing now with some member states raising the stakes on this could change the discussion. And it's very important because the European Union is a very active member in Codex, and it will be very detrimental that the situation improves in Europe also to have a constructive discussion at international level.
How interesting is that? Every country is represented, from Europe is represented within Codex, but then there's also the European Union, which is, so it's like a double representation. But do you think, I mean, at the Codex level, if we harmonize guidelines for probiotics at the global approach, well, it should facilitate things, no? Because we've gotten pushback.
Well, definitely the European legislative framework provides that Codex guidelines have to be observed. It's not, Codex guidelines and standards are not an obligation to be implemented at national level or European level or in other region, but they have to be observed, they have to be considered. So if there is a Codex guidance could also be influential in bringing the discussions home or in a positive direction in Europe as well, like in everywhere else in the world.
Suzanne, what do you think about that from an industry perspective?
I think, and to David's point about the products coming from one country to another, that is a very apparent trend that there's no way you can sort of put the water shields between the borders, so products will go across the borders. And probiotics is a quite universal word that is easily understood by all countries. So I think that that's going to push the legislation at national levels to follow Denmark and Netherlands and Spain.
You come from a country that's pro.
Yeah,
on the
we
pro
are
side.
very pro.
Good. Should we turn it to the audience for any regulatory questions at this point? Anybody have anything to ask or comment, challenge? No? Okay. Turn it to science a little bit. And thank you, Bruno, for saying what I already have in my notes. Every scientist says there's more science that always is needed. You mentioned it in your presentation. So if we continue on that thinking, we'll be chasing the 17 years that Gina mentioned in her presentation.
Yeah, the fact is, every time as long as we can come back here every 2 years with new scientists presenting new results, there will be research. But I
Hopefully
interrupted you,
we'll
sorry.
close the gap, you think?
Yeah, I mean, research is always there
Yes.
for improving and finding solutions.
Of course.
And often it's the case, the more you learn, the more questions pop up. So this is the way it's going. But if I must raise a particular issue that is important nowadays, is that despite all the papers out there, last year we had 2 or 3 papers in American Gastroenterology Association, medical doctors posing questions about the functionality and the effectivity of probiotics. So apparently the message is not clear yet. So research is needed, I think, to clarify much more about the fundamental way that probiotics can interact. The interesting thing is also that what we see is if medical doctors use probiotics, it's often in domains or application fields where traditional drugs fail. Think about IBD, IBS, allergy also, autoimmunity. And the drugs which are available there, they have side effects that prevent people from taking on the long term. The advantage of probiotics is that you can take them without any side effect, also on the longer term. So I think this is definitely a concept which we have to try to solve as well, try to show why that is, and mechanisms of action are very crucial in this. And since there's many strains out there with many different mechanisms, I think we'll be busy for a while. But it doesn't take 17 years to get there. I think it should be easy to pick up a particular strain in a particular application and try to explain how it works. With modern omics technologies, I think we can get there in much shorter time.
So when the gap closes, what is that science that excites you as a scientist? What do you want to see being, what do we want to solve with all this science?
Exactly this, I think. There is a number of diseases out there which are increasing in numbers, which put burdens on people's lives in really bad conditions sometimes, if you think about autoimmunity, what it can do to you. And if there would be a few patients that can be saved just by preventing it maybe, or also on a treatment level, but then we're not talking about foods anymore, then I think that would be very, very interesting perspectives for any scientist in the field. I think should make him happy if he can bring something to the market that will help people in the end. And I think there's people in the room here, and we saw presentations this morning about Faecalibacterium and Akkermansia, which are doing the right thing in the sense that they try to reveal what these type of bugs can do in the future in preventing obesity and this kind of diseases.
So we'll bridge the gap from
I think we will.
prevention and support to actually addressing.
Well, I think both
treatment.
axes are valuable and should be
Yes, very
should be kept
different
separately.
pathways.
So definitely. So if we talk about the food area, a continuous maintenance and intake of probiotics may prevent a number of those diseases developing. But once they are there might be other bugs or other approaches that will help to actually fight the consequences of these diseases.
Susan,
But there was a question, I think.
oh, sure. Yes, great. Thank you.
Area that you're discussing. But Bruno, now you actually talked about it a little bit in the end, because when you're talking about diseases, do you then see this role for the probiotics, or you see it for the LBPs?
Well, if we talk about diseases, definitely. That's what I said. We need to keep both tracks separate. So if we talk about diseases, curing disease, preventing disease, that's definitely the LBPs. If we talk about maintaining health and keeping people healthy, preventing obesitas, preventing type 2 diabetes, that is definitely in prevention, but before people are ill. So this is treating, preventive, healthy people. So that's the food area, I would say. But I agree with you. Both sectors should be kept completely, and I think Magali is here in the room for the PRI, representing the PRI. This is the message we've been trying to distribute since several years now.
Yeah, I would like to ask a bit combining the regulatory part and the scientific part, and then also exploring, looking forward into the future. By the way, apologies if this is a question you've already discussed over and over, but I was wondering, would there be an option, and is that something where IPA organization thinks they can maybe help to make a quality label with 5 stars for probiotic strain, really good evidence, double-blind, placebo control, repeated, multi-center, etc. And we also see these emerging probiotics. I'm every time again surprised, often negatively surprised, when there is again a strain, and then you look further. And yes, there was an in vitro trial done, And yes, they put that on the probiotic package because they may put the label probiotic on the package, which I think damages the credibility in the market. But there are some very, very good strains for certain benefits. So I was wondering, is that in the agenda of IPA, or would you recommend that? Also looking at IPA, maybe other organizations, quality label, voluntary, but with a gradual quality grade. 1 star, 2 star, 5
Well,
stars.
And go ahead and I'll follow up. Sorry. No, go
Or
ahead.
you can comment from the IP, I can comment from the scientific point of view.
Okay, no, the IP has looked at these things. We've published guidelines from labeling to manufacturing. We're working on technical. We're talking to a certification organization to maybe put these all together in a book and create them, you know, a quality cert program. It always comes down to, you know, this grading approach, 3-to-1, silver, gold, bronze, platinum, that we have to be careful on the perception we give to the consumer. Because if you say, you know, this probiotic fits under bronze and that one under silver or under gold, the consumer is going to say, well, I always want the gold. Bronze is eh. But they're actually quality probiotics being produced, just maybe the science level might be more generic versus more scientifically specific. So I don't think a grading approach or a logo is the way to go. I think we got to continue to press the message on guidelines, you know, from how we produce them to how we enumerate them. The labeling that we've put out is, you know, something that we started in the US, because in the US you can only label probiotics milligram, but now, and we said, no, they have to be CFUs because they're live organisms. Now they're adopted all over the world. I've heard government agencies talking about, we saw your labeling guidelines, Brazil or Australia. So we have to press the message. Will a cert program be the answer? To be seen. We're continuing to work out and put out as much as we can, as much as to get rid of that misinformation, you know, with initiatives like at the college and as much media as we can. We'll see if a certification program will be something that the board of IP eventually gets behind.
Any dissenting opinion? It's always interesting.
Well, from the scientific point of view, I would want to ask, how are you going to organize this? Do we really need this? There's no probiotic that can do it all. I think everybody in the room will agree. So you have an application field. Let's take vagina or skin but then you have strains which were particularly, if you talk about gut, which have an impact on the immune system, on maybe the gut-brain axis, on metabolism. Will you rate all of these applications with their mechanism, particularly with your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scale? It's going to be a mess, I think.
Today there's nothing. So
Yes. Are you from industry? Because it's an interesting,
university of industry of non-profit foundations, it's quite broad.
yeah, it's an interesting question because everybody has a different view on this, right? Like, what do you think, Suzanne, as from industry? Would you think something like this would be valuable?
Yeah, I think that as much as everybody would like to have enough data to support a claim on the packaging, I also think that that's not likely to happen in the near future, especially not since you can't do any research on people that are sick. You have to do your research on healthy people. So that's complicating the matter of proving anything. So yes, that would be awesome, but I think that when we're all pursuing the innovation in probiotics and whatnot, and that means that at this point we're all over the place and we're not really going deep. So while we wait for that, I think we have to live with the fact that we are dietary supplements, and to that point, I think that the work of the IPA with getting authorities to approve the use of the word probiotic, that makes the consumers help us a little bit in terms of, as this word is now generally recognized as from the definition of what a probiotic is, then that is kind of helping us with the uptake of probiotics. To get claims, to be able to prove probiotics well enough on a broad scale to make claims, I don't see that coming.
On,
Anyway, anytime soon, I should add, because it's just a matter of,
I won't say monthly, annually, I'll say on a weekly basis, the science is just exponentially growing. We published last year, we looked at 2 databases, WHO database, ICTRP, and the clinicaltrials.gov database. There was over 1,600 human clinicals with probiotics and over 700 indications. We're analyzing what those indications were now as a part 2. I mean, some of the stuff in there is phenomenal, and the research, you know, kind of bridges amazing science. You can't use it. The regulation cuts your feet from underneath you.
yeah, but isn't that because you can't use it because it's not enough?
It
If
depends.
it's 1,600 studies
Well,
with
wait a minute.
700...
It's not enough compared to what? We're clinically trying food supplements. We're not clinically trying drugs.
True, but there is apparently enough data to categorize. This is really gold, good data, no doubt. This is more wishy-washy. It's more a bottom-up, voluntary labeling. We should have an agreement. This one for vagina health, or that one for...
As an ingredient category, probiotics, and I've been told this, we're
So-
kind of like the poster child. We try to self-police, we try to publish guidelines, we try to do it the right way. You know, countries have told me this when we visited. We're an example. But
Sorry,
I mean,
George.
Yeah, that's great.
but it's not enough.
Many people appreciate that it was the question, what is the next thing?
Yes.
Not me as industry or whatever, but me as consumer, and you as consumer as well.
Yes.
If I may,
Please.
from a regulatory perspective, because this discussion may go on and on for a while, but from a regulatory perspective, we have already experienced it in Europe, for example, the system of traffic light. So food cannot be reduced to a green, red, and orange light. So it's difficult, and we are trying to simplify complex concept. And we see that doesn't work for food. So I think that we risk to go in the direction of good and bad microorganisms, good and bad strains, good and bad probiotics, and I don't think that this is as simple as such. And thank you.
You mentioned consumer. It's a good segue to education that we're doing with Gina. And I'd
No,
like
true,
to,
that's good. I also didn't say it would be simple, and food and the traffic lights is another discussion, but to get some light in the complexity of probiotics.
But I think
that's,
it's exactly...
Maybe there's a better idea. I believe in one idea comes a better, but if you do what you always did, you get what you always got.
But if you play police, you have to have the license to do so and the validation to do so. So even if IPA would not be able to do it, look what's happening currently at EFSA, FDA level. They don't succeed in making that difference right now. The judgment is yes or no, you have to claim. Although that is a particular application area, particular characterized strain, everything we know. So if they do not want to take that decision, how do you want an organization like IPA to take that organization? We are actually a number of companies trying to achieve the best. So how is the consumer going to judge this if we all of a sudden come up with a code that is not being supported by EFSA or by FDA or whatever? It will not have any value. And it will be a mess, I keep saying this.
Gina, you had a comment?
Yes. Just on that point, if I could share sort of a clinical perspective, I think we run the risk of taking an overly reductionist approach. And right now in the field, and broadly in the field of healthcare and integrative healthcare, we're really focused on personalized medicine and personalized nutrition. So it's hard to categorize something as universally good or bad, because for one individual, this may be the therapeutic intervention that's appropriate, whereas for someone else, it may not be. And so I think when we oversimplify, we may obscure some important findings that could be of value to one person and maybe not to others. I think it's a nice idea, certainly for consumers. It makes it easier to navigate this complex space, but I don't know if we're quite ready for that clinically.
Thank you all for commenting. Yeah.
Thank you. So just to continue on the education aspect, I wanted to ask what your thoughts are on the course and that we're going to offer through the program. Do you think it will increase knowledge to the students that will take it? Do you think, you know, what we will bring to the table, will it translate to their real life, you know, existence and their work?
Yes, I mean, that's the idea, certainly. You know, it's interesting. I shared with you data from the consumer side of how many, across the world, how many people are purchasing and using probiotic products. And I think whether we're ready for it or not, there's remarkable interest from the consumers in probiotics. And so our goal, our hope, is that we can equip clinicians and leaders who are driving the manufacturing and putting the products out there to make sure clinicians are well informed and can help direct or redirect their patients to purchase the right type of product that's suitable for them. Many clinicians have no idea about the regulations surrounding dietary supplements broadly. And so they're not well trained. We know in healthcare, most conventional medical docs have very little training on sort of the application of nutritional sciences. It's very much focused on biochemistry, for example, very little on the applied side of nutrition in general. So certainly there's a broad lack of understanding of how these products are regulated and the differences. And so we want to make sure our clinical students are well versed on this, and then for the leaders who are going to be producing these products, make sure they understand how to interpret the science to put out high quality products into the marketplace, because the consumers are buying these whether we are guiding them appropriately or not.
So obviously threads in the healthcare professional community and the business leadership community.
Yes. Yeah.
One question that is going to probably come up, because, you know, it always comes up when we talk science. How will you address the bias topic? That now that you're working with industry, putting a course together to educate, how will you address that?
No, that's an excellent question, George. I think the beauty of it is that inherent to academia, there's checks and balances with the content that ends up in the curriculum. And so, for example, with the work we've done with IPA, everything has been vetted through an independent faculty curriculum committee that reviews and makes sure everything is objective and evidence-based. And then their decision goes to our faculty senate that further reviews it on a broader scale. And then they will essentially, I mean, faculty own their curriculum, so they give us the thumbs up or thumbs down whether that can move forward. And then in the development of the course itself, we have, again, a lot of checks and balances in place, making sure nothing is presented in a commercial manner, making sure everything is substantiated with valid sources of evidence and cited appropriately. I mean, we even have actually an instructional designer that will review every presentation slide before it's in front of the students to make sure everything meets those standards. So, you know, again, a lot of checks and balances in place to make sure everything is presented in an objective way to inform the student and not influence them.
Available for anybody who might ask.
Yes.
Okay, good. Any questions at this point from our audience? Any additional questions? So I had one that I want to start to go out with everybody, and it's kind of a two-tiered question. I'd like to start with Bruno down at the end. If you were a guest lecturer at this probiotic course, what would be your main message to the students, you know, which are coming from everywhere? Business leaders, scientists, healthcare professionals, number one. And then from a personal perspective, and this is for everybody, think about this. What's your blue sky thought, dream? You know, what would you like to hear people, or what would you like to tell your kids happen to this industry in 5 years?
Wow. Well, the first message I told to the students is actually what I just said. There's no probiotic that can do it all. So this is really something that a lot of people, consumers, they expect. Okay, the medical doctor, they prescribe them a probiotic and that will solve all my issues. So a probiotic comes with science, so that is without anything. And I think that the fact that we have these conferences every 2 years, or many conferences on probiotics, shows that this is the message that is really understood also by academia, by industry, and hopefully also in the future with the regulators, because they actually have to integrate the results of these research. Unfortunately, as we know, regulators run like 5 to 10 years behind the science. And so if you say, well, within 5 years, what I would like to see is that everything is regulated, that at least there is clear guidelines of how to set up clinical trials, what are the validated methods. We see huge developments in the omics technology. None of them is currently validated. So what does it do to the future results that we will obtain in terms of regulation? It's going to be a difficult situation. But of course, and also the dream I could have is that indeed there will be probiotics on the market that help prevent the diseases we are talking about today, and that we know are getting worse in society. I mean, we've seen the allergy going up, obesity in the United States is dramatically. So this comes with a cost, this comes with human costs, societal cost, economic cost, which is huge. So if within 5 years we could at least see maybe that this is stabilizing because of the use of this type of products, that would make me very, very happy.
Thank you. Rosanna? Deep thought there on that question.
I was thinking, yes, what I would like, if I think to the European policies about food in the last few years, we have been, I talk more from a European perspective, we have been talking about safety of food, about good and bad food, but I would like to have a more proactive policies at European level, talking about food and nutrition in a different way, in a more holistic way, which include science, include probiotics, beneficial microbes, and so this would be, maybe within 5 years, this would be something that maybe we can try to achieve, I don't know.
We'll certainly try. David, if you were a guest lecturer at the probiotic course and your 5-year vision, dream, blue sky.
Harmonization. I think that sums up at international level and a regional level, because there are too many divergences. So I think that's already a big challenge.
Yeah.
So I think 5 years could be perhaps a short term, but I would like to see that happening.
Suzanne?
Yeah, in terms of the message, I think that I would communicate that this is actually an art of maneuvering in the space of selling a product that is approved like a food, documented like a drug, and priced as a gummy bear. And that's just the way, that's just our reality. And with the help of organizations like IPA, we try to communicate the safety and the potential efficacy. And then, like Rosanne, I would hope in 5 years that we have an increased awareness of it. Take care of your microbiome, or take care of your intestinal microbiota. It's important, and that's going to keep you healthy. With
Thanks.
probiotics, with fermented foods, whatever it takes. Yeah. Yeah.
Gina?
Well, you know, I think, as I was sharing in the presentation, I think that convergence of all these key players is so key. And if we can do it early on, before people enter practice or the industry, so while they're still training as part of their educational model, it really changes the game. You know, I alluded to it in my talk. In healthcare, for the past decade, there's been a big push towards interprofessional education and collaboration. So different types of healthcare providers come together, learn together, share insights and perspectives, And the goal is better patient outcomes. Well, I love extending that model to bringing industry into the conversation. So again, we can make sure high quality products are coming out of the market. We can make sure leaders and manufacturers and all the different players in industry understand the clinical needs more effectively, and we can work together. And again, I hope this can accelerate the pace of responsible, high-quality, effective products entering the market. We can make sure that companies are putting out the information, that clinicians are using that information in a meaningful and effective way to support improved health. I mean, ultimately, 30,000 feet, all of us together, whether we're in academia, research, or industry, are working to improve public health, community health, individual health with what we're doing. And so I think coming together is really such a key part, and the earlier the better. So when these people go out into the workforce, they're one step ahead and already have those contacts in place to really have a head start to make a difference.
Well, comments, questions?
What about you, George?
I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming from you. That's why I wrote my notes. I want to get rid of misinformation. All the stuff that, all the naysayers and all the what we hear about probiotics, what I mentioned, it's not regulated, there is no benefits. So, you know, that would be my message. Whatever it would take to create a course to get rid of that. You know, get rid of it because it's not true. I mean, the science proves it. We know it. We're the converted. Let's get it out there. That's one. Global harmonization, the Codex initiative, for it to come to fruition. You know, that's my 5 years, sky vision, dream, whatever you want to call it. And I've been talking about it since we introduced it. And then for IPA to become the de facto go-to probiotic association globally. That's mine. I think we're out of time if we want to get up there. And we've spoken enough, and I think we've held you here enough. Thank you for being patient with us. Thank you for attending. We really appreciate it. It concludes our first IPA track day at the Rome Congress, which was a 2-year discussion that came into fruition today. It was really interesting. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe there's a second edition, and we can have more, you know, more physical than virtual and all that stuff. I hope it was captivating, engaging, thought-provoking for all of you. You know, I want to thank the Rome Congress for collaborating with us. I want to thank you guys who attended today, our attendees, and sincerely thank our sponsors for the day, which, you know, helped make this happen as well, Deerline Probiotics and Enzymes. Transitioning to that, I'd like to invite the room for some beverages, if you will. It's where lunch was. There's kind of like a small little kind of balcony. It kind of looks over the Vatican. I'm not sure. They told me that. It's a small private garden. And I'd like to, you know, thank Targadis and Pharma Extracta, who graciously also, you know, stepped up to help sponsor that cocktail as well. So thanks again. Hope to see you soon. And we can continue the talks up top. If you don't know where it is, just follow us. Thank you. Thank you.